Deathworlders heed the call of aliens in distress. HFY Sci-Fi Story, Commander Raven Blackwood stood at the observation deck of the U.S. Prometheus, watching the endless expanse of space drift by through the reinforced viewport. The ship had been conducting deep space surveys for 8 months now, cataloging new systems at the very edge of human-explored territory. It was methodical work, but Raven knew how crucial it was. Someone had to map the unknown regions, and humanity had always been good at pushing boundaries. The bridge hummed with quiet activity. Navigator Zane Okafor worked at his station, plotting their next jump coordinates. Communications officer Petra Volkov monitored the subspace channels for any signs of intelligent life. Dr. Kaide Yamamoto, their xenobiologist, analyzed atmospheric readings from distant planets. Chief Engineer Niko Petrov was 3 decks below, ensuring their experimental fusion drive stayed within safe parameters. Raven had commanded starships for 15 years, ever since humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel. She'd seen nebulae that could swallow entire solar systems, discovered planets made of pure crystal, and even made first contact with 3 different alien species. But something about this mission felt different. They were farther from Earth than any human vessel had ever ventured, truly alone in the cosmic dark. "Commander!" Petra called out suddenly, her voice tight with excitement. "I'm picking up something on the deep space array. It's definitely artificial." Raven moved to the communication station. "What kind of signal?" Petra frowned at her displays, adjusting the filters. "It's incredibly faint, like it's traveled a tremendous distance. The frequency is completely unknown to our databases. But, Commander..." She paused, listening intently through her headset. "It's repeating the same pattern, every 43 seconds, exactly the same transmission." "Could be a beacon," Zane suggested, looking up from his navigation charts. "Or some kind of automated distress call." Dr. Yamamoto abandoned his atmospheric analysis and hurried over. "Can you clean up the signal? Enhance it somehow?" "Working on it," Petra said, her fingers dancing across the control interface. "It's going to take a few minutes. The signal is so weak it's barely above background radiation." Raven watched her communications officer work. Petra had been with the Prometheus crew for 3 years, and she was the best at her job Raven had ever seen. If anyone could decode an alien transmission, it was her. 20 minutes passed in tense silence. Finally, Petra looked up with a mixture of amazement and concern on her face. "I've got it! The signal is coming from approximately 15 light-years away, from a system our star charts don't even have designated yet. But Commander, I've managed to isolate what I think is the actual message." "Let's hear it," Raven said. A strange sound filled the bridge. It was unlike anything they'd encountered before, a complex mixture of harmonics, clicks, and what sounded almost like singing. The pattern was hauntingly beautiful, but carried an unmistakable undertone of desperation. "That's definitely not human," Niko said, emerging from the turbo lift. "I heard it down in engineering. What are we looking at?" Dr. Yamamoto was already working on his portable analysis unit. "Give me some time with this. I think I can run it through our translation algorithms. Maybe find some patterns." "How long?" Raven asked. "Could be an hour, could be 6. Depends on how complex their linguistic structure is." Raven nodded. "Do it. Zane, plot a course toward the signal's origin. Best possible speed, but don't strain the engines. Petra, keep monitoring. If that signal changes or stops, I want to know immediately." "Aye, Commander," they responded in unison. 4 hours later, Dr. Yamamoto called the senior staff to the main conference room. His usually calm demeanor showed cracks of barely contained excitement and worry. "I've decoded the message," he announced without preamble, "and you're not going to believe what it says." He activated the holographic display, showing a complex linguistic analysis. "The species calls themselves the Lyrian Collective. They're from a system they call Veiltar, which matches the coordinates of our signal source. The message is, it's a plea for help." Raven leaned forward. "What kind of help?" Kaide cleared his throat and began reading from his translation. "To any who might hear our cry across the void, we are the Lyrian Collective of the Veiltar system. Our worlds burn. The Harvester Swarm has come to our space, and we are powerless to stop them. We have heard whispers of the Terran Deathworlders, the ones who emerged from the Chaos realm called Earth. If you exist, if these stories are true, we beg you to help us. We are dying, and we have nowhere else to turn." The conference room fell silent. Raven felt her heart rate increase. Deathworlders? They're talking about us? It seems so, Katie said. Earth is what most galactic species would classify as a Class 12 death world. High gravity, extreme weather, aggressive ecosystem, frequent extinction events. The fact that we not only survived but thrived here would be significant to other species. Nico shook his head in disbelief. How did they even know about us? We've barely made contact with anyone out here. Word travels fast in space, Petra said. Information spreads through trader networks, diplomatic channels. Maybe we're more famous than we think. Zane was studying the navigation data. Commander, I've plotted the course to the Veiltar system. At maximum sustainable speed, we're looking at 8 days. What about this harvester swarm they mentioned? Raven asked. Any idea what we might be facing? Kade shook his head. The translation algorithms can't give us more detail than what's in the message. But if an entire star system is calling for help... He trailed off, the implications clear. Raven looked around the table at her crew. These were good people, all of them. They had families back on Earth, dreams and plans for the future. She had no right to ask them to risk their lives for aliens they'd never met. But then she thought about the desperation in that alien song, even filtered through translation algorithms. Someone was dying out there, and they had specifically called for help from humanity. We're going to the Veiltar system, Raven decided. Someone needs help, and they think we might be their only hope. We can't ignore that. Commander, Nico said carefully, we don't know anything about this harvester swarm. We don't know how dangerous they are, or if one ship can make any difference. We don't know how dangerous a lot of things are until we face them, Raven replied. But I know one thing, if someone is calling for help and they believe we're their last chance, then we have to try. Petra nodded slowly. The commander is right. We can't just ignore this. Katie, how long until we reach the system? Raven asked. 8 days at maximum speed, he confirmed. Then let's get started. Nico, I want the engines ready for an extended run. Petra, keep monitoring that signal. If it changes or stops, I want to know immediately. Everyone else, start preparing for whatever we might find out there. As her crew dispersed to their duties, Raven stared out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, aliens were fighting for their lives. They had heard stories about humans and decided to call for help from the Deathworlders of Earth. Raven just hoped they could live up to those stories. 8 days later, the UES Prometheus dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Veiltar system. What Commander Raven Blackwood saw in the main viewer made her blood run cold. The outer planets were under attack. Where there should have been ice and rock, she could see massive dark shapes attached to the planetary surfaces like parasitic growths. The shapes moved slowly, methodically, consuming everything they touched. My God, Dr. Yamamoto whispered from his station. What are those things? Tactical Officer Lieutenant Commander Axel Reyes ran a full-spectrum scan of the system. His face went pale as he read the results. Commander, I'm detecting over 400 alien vessels in this system. They're not like anything in our databases. Raven studied the tactical display. The enemy ships looked more like living organisms than constructed vessels. They were elongated and segmented, resembling giant spaceborne worms or larvae. Some were small, about the size of human fighters. Others were enormous, larger than Earth's biggest orbital stations. They're organic, Kata said in amazement. These aren't built ships, they're grown. The harvester swarm is literally a swarm of living creatures. That doesn't matter, Raven said grimly. What matters is what they're doing to this system. Petra, are you still receiving the distress signal? Yes, but it's much weaker now, Petra replied, her voice heavy with implication. I think most of the transmitters have been destroyed. Raven felt anger building in her chest. They had come as fast as they could, but they might already be too late. Can you locate the source of the remaining signal? Working on it, Petra said, adjusting her equipment. Got it. It's coming from the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets. Take us there, Raven ordered. But keep us hidden. I want to know what we're dealing with before they know we're here. The Prometheus moved carefully through the asteroid field. Chief Engineer Nico had modified their engine output to run nearly silent, and they slipped between the larger rocks like a ghost ship. "Contact," Axel announced. "I'm reading several ships hiding in the asteroids. They're not like the attackers, these look peaceful." On the main screen, Raven could see a small group of ships unlike anything humans had ever built. They were elegant, flowing designs that seemed to have been grown rather than constructed. Their hulls were translucent, revealing soft bioluminescent lighting within. "I'm receiving a transmission," Petra said. "It's on the same frequency as the distress signal." "Put it through." A new voice filled the bridge. It was melodious, almost musical, but Raven could hear the exhaustion and fear even through the translation matrix. "Unknown vessel, please identify yourself. If you are with the Harvesters, we surrender." "We have no more weapons to fight you with." Raven stepped forward. "This is Commander Raven Blackwood of the human vessel US Prometheus. We received your distress call. We're here to help." There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Humans? You are the Terran Deathworlders? You actually came?" "Yes, we came," Raven said. "Who am I speaking with?" "I am Kethvar of the Lyrian Collective. I cannot believe you are real. We thought the stories were just myths." "We're real," Raven assured him. "And we want to help. Can we meet face to face?" Another pause. "Yes, but be careful. The Harvesters have scout organisms everywhere. If they detect you..." "We'll be careful," Raven promised. An hour later, Raven and Dr. Yamamoto were aboard a Lyrian vessel. The alien ship was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls seemed to be alive, pulsing gently with bioluminescent patterns. The air was filled with a sweet floral scent. Kethvar was waiting for them in what appeared to be the ship's central chamber. He was tall and graceful, with translucent skin that showed the gentle flow of luminescent fluids beneath. His large eyes held an ancient sadness. "Thank you for coming," Kethvar said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We did not think anyone would answer our call." "Tell us about the Harvester Swarm," Raven said. "What are we fighting?" Kethvar's bioluminescent patterns dimmed with sorrow. "They call themselves the Mordak. They came from the deep void 8 months ago. At first, we tried to communicate with them to understand what they wanted." "What did they want?" Dr. Yamamoto asked gently. "Everything," Kethvar replied. "They consume entire worlds. They eat the atmosphere, the oceans, the life itself. Nothing remains when they finish feeding." Raven felt sick. How many ships do they have? Hundreds, perhaps thousands. They breed new organisms from the matter they consume. Every world they destroy makes them stronger. Axel's voice came through Raven's communicator. "Commander, I'm reading movement in the swarm. A group of about 30 organisms is heading toward the inner system." Raven looked at Kethvar. "Do your people have any weapons at all?" The alien's patterns flickered with shame. "We are a peaceful species, Commander. We build ships to explore and learn, not to destroy. We do not even understand the concept of warfare." "How many of your people are left?" "Perhaps 12,000, scattered in small groups throughout the asteroid belt. Our homeworlds." Kethvar's voice broke. "Our homeworlds are gone. The Mordak have been feeding on them for months." Raven placed a hand on the alien's shoulder. His skin was warm and soft, like touching silk. "We're going to help you, I promise. But we're going to need your help too." "Our help? But we know nothing of combat." "Maybe not," Raven said, "but you know things we don't. Your ships, your technology. If we work together, we might have a chance." Dr. Yamamoto was examining the living walls of the Lyrian ship. "This biotechnology is incredible. These ships can repair themselves, can't they?" "Yes," Kethvar said, confused. "Is that unusual?" "It's very unusual," Yamamoto said excitedly. "Raven, if we could combine their self-repair capabilities with our weapon systems?" Raven nodded. She was beginning to see possibilities. "Kethvar, are you willing to fight alongside us, even if it means learning to harm others?" The alien looked frightened, but then his bioluminescent pattern shifted to show determination. The Mordak killed my family, my friends, my entire world. Yes, I will learn to fight. Good, Raven said. Then let's get started. We have a lot of work to do and not much time to do it. As they began planning their desperate defense, Raven couldn't help but think about the odds against them. One human ship and a handful of peaceful aliens against a swarm of hundreds of bioships. But humans had faced impossible odds before, and they had a reputation to live up to. 3 days had passed since the humans made contact with the Lyrian Collective. Commander Raven Blackwood watched from the bridge as her crew worked frantically with the aliens to prepare for battle, who was not going as smoothly as she had hoped. Security Chief Dante Reeves was attempting to teach a group of Lyrians how to use human weapons. The aliens kept dropping the pulse rifles and backing away whenever Dante demonstrated the firing mechanism. "I cannot do this," one of the Lyrians said, his bioluminescent patterns flickering with distress. "It feels wrong to cause harm to another living being." Dante tried to remain patient, but Raven could see the frustration in his posture. "Look, I understand this is difficult for you, but if you don't learn to defend yourselves, the Mordak will kill you all." "Perhaps there is another way," the alien said hopefully. "Perhaps we can reason with them." "We already tried reasoning," Dante said. "They ate your planet instead of listening." Meanwhile, Dr. Yamamoto was having much better success working with Kethvar on the technology exchange. The Lyrians had shown him how their bioships could regenerate damaged sections by growing new tissue. In return, Kaede was teaching them about human weapons and defensive systems. "This is fascinating," Kaede said, running his hands along the living hull of a Lyrian ship. "The biomaterial responds to electrical impulses. We could program it to form armor plating when it detects incoming weapons fire." Kethvar watched nervously as Kaede attached a human-computer interface to his ship's nervous system. "Will this cause pain to my vessel?" "No more than getting a vaccination would hurt you," Kaede assured him. "We're just teaching it some new defensive behaviors." Chief Engineer Nico was in the Prometheus's engineering bay with a Lyrian biotech specialist named Veltara. They were attempting to integrate human and Lyrian technologies, but the philosophical differences were creating challenges. "Your people's approach to engineering is completely different from ours," Nico said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You grow your machines instead of building them." Veltara touched one of the human engine components with curiosity. "And your people force metal and electricity to obey your will. It seems so violent." "Violence isn't always bad," Nico replied. "Sometimes you need to force things to work when lives are at stake." On the bridge, pilot Maya Singh was reviewing reconnaissance data she had gathered during stealth flights through the asteroid field. She had been studying the Mordak movement patterns, looking for weaknesses. "Commander," Maya said, looking up from her flight data. "I've been watching how the harvester organisms move. They're fast, but they're not very intelligent individually. They seem to follow simple behavioral patterns, like a school of fish." "What do you mean?" Raven asked. "When I got close to a group yesterday, they all turned toward me at exactly the same time. Same angle, same speed. It's like they're all controlled by a single mind." Dr. Yamamoto looked up from his work. "That matches what we've learned from the Lyrians. They say the Mordak have a collective consciousness. The smaller organisms are controlled by the larger ones." "Could be useful," Raven said, "if we can disrupt their coordination somehow." Lieutenant Commander Axel interrupted from his tactical station. "Commander, we've got movement. A group of Mordak organisms is heading this way. Looks like about 25 of them." Raven felt her heart rate spike. "Are they scouts or hunters?" "Hard to tell, but they're moving in a search pattern, like they're looking for something." "Red alert," Raven ordered. "All ships, prepare for combat." The next few minutes were chaos. The Human-Lyrian Alliance had been planning and preparing, but they had never actually fought together. Now they were about to find out if their desperate partnership could work. Maya Singh launched her fighter from the Prometheus, followed by 3 Lyrian pilots in their own small craft. The aliens had never flown in combat before, and Maya could hear their nervous breathing over the communication channel. "Stay close to me," Maya instructed. "Do exactly what I do when I do it." The Mordak organism spotted them immediately. The enemy creatures were hideous things, looking like giant spaceborne parasites with weapon clusters grafted onto their biohulls. They moved toward the human and Lyrian fighters with hungry eagerness. Maya had been flying combat missions for 6 years. She had quick reflexes and excellent spatial awareness. But as the first Mordak organism opened fire, she realized something that chilled her to the bone. The enemy was fast, much faster than something that size should be able to move. Maya barely managed to dodge the first wave of bioenergy beams. "Break formation!" she shouted to the Lyrian pilots. "Use the asteroids for cover!" But the Lyrian pilots were too slow to react. One of them flew directly into a Mordak energy discharge and exploded in a burst of bioluminescent fire. "Calavan!" another Lyrian pilot cried out, using what Maya assumed was the dead pilot's name. "Get out of there!" Axel's voice crackled over the radio from the Prometheus. "You're outnumbered!" "Not yet," Maya said through gritted teeth. She spun her fighter around a large asteroid and came up behind one of the Mordak organisms. Her pulse cannons tore into its organic hull, and the creature shrieked as it died. The sound was horrible. It wasn't the explosion of a machine, but the death cry of a living being. Maya had killed before, but never something that sounded so much like it was in agony. The remaining Lyrian pilots heard the scream too. One of them stopped maneuvering entirely and just floated motionless in space, paralyzed by horror. "I cannot do this," the alien pilot said over the radio. "It is too terrible." More Mordak organisms swooped down on the motionless Lyrian fighter. Maya tried to intercept, but she was too far away. The enemy bioweapons tore the alien ship apart. Maya felt rage building inside her. These creatures weren't just attacking the Lyrians, they were using the aliens' compassion against them. The Lyrians were too gentle to fight back effectively, and the Mordak seemed to know it. "That's enough," Maya said. She stopped trying to be defensive and went on the attack. What happened next would later be called the Asteroid Field Massacre. Maya Singh, a human pilot from the death world called Earth, showed the galaxy what 6 years of combat training and a lifetime of survival instincts could accomplish against an enemy that had never faced true predators. She moved through the Mordak formation like a wolf among sheep. Her fighter twisted and turned in ways that should have been impossible, using the three-dimensional maze of the asteroid field to her advantage. The enemy organisms tried to follow her movements, but kept crashing into rocks or each other. Within 15 minutes, 18 Mordak organisms were dead. The remaining 7 fled back toward the main swarm, probably to report what they had encountered. Maya returned to the Prometheus, her hands shaking with adrenaline. As she climbed out of her fighter, she found Commander Blackwood waiting for her. "Excellent work, pilot," Raven said, "but we lost 2 Lyrian ships." "I know, Commander," Maya said quietly. "They're too gentle for this kind of fighting. The Mordak are using their compassion as a weapon." Raven nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to be strong enough for all of us." As the crew prepared for the next attack, word of the skirmish spread through both the human and Lyrian ships. The aliens had seen what a single human pilot could do against overwhelming odds. For the first time since the Harvester Swarm arrived, some of them began to hope. Maybe, just maybe, the Deathworlders really could save them. The news of Maya Singh's victory in the asteroid field spread quickly through the small fleet of human and Lyrian ships. But Commander Raven Blackwood knew they had much bigger problems approaching. The 7 Mordak organisms that had escaped would report back to the main swarm. Soon, hundreds of enemy creatures would come looking for them. "We need to be ready," Raven told her senior officers during their morning briefing. "The real battle is coming, and we can't win it the same way Maya won her fight." Dr. Yamamoto had been working with Kethvar for 3 days straight, barely stopping to eat or sleep. The results of their collaboration were starting to show. Several Lyrian ships now had human weapons integrated into their biohulls, and the living vessels were learning to form defensive armor when attacked. "The integration is working better than I hoped," K-Day reported. "The Lyrian bioships can adapt our technology and make it part of themselves. We're creating something completely new." Communication specialist Quinn Torres had been working on a different problem. The humans and Lyrians needed to be able to communicate instantly during battle, but their systems were completely incompatible. "I think I've solved it," Quinn said, holding up a small device that seemed to be part machine, part living tissue. It's a translator that can convert human radio signals into the bioelectrical pulses the Lyrians use. We can all talk to each other in real time now. Chief Engineer Nico and the Lyrian biotechnician Veltara had become an unlikely team. Nico's practical human engineering combined with Veltara's organic technology was producing weapons that neither species could have created alone. "Look at this," Nico said, holding up what appeared to be a living missile. "It's a projectile that can think for itself." Veltara grew the guidance system from modified neural tissue, and I added the explosive warhead. Veltara's bioluminescent pattern showed both pride and concern. "My people have never created anything designed to cause harm. It feels strange, but also necessary." Security Chief Dante had given up trying to teach the Lyrians to use weapons. Instead, he was training them for other roles during battle. Some would handle medical duties, others would manage communications, and a few would pilot ships to rescue survivors. "We're playing to everyone's strengths," Dante explained to Raven. "The Lyrians are natural healers and communicators. Let them do what they're good at while we handle the fighting." Medical Officer Dr. Iris Chen was amazed by what she had learned from working with Lyrian healers. Their biotechnology could regenerate lost limbs in hours and heal wounds that would be fatal to humans. Combined with human medical knowledge, they could save lives that would have been impossible to save before. "Commander," Iris said, "if we survive this, the medical advances we could make together would revolutionize healthcare. The Lyrians can literally bring people back from the edge of death." 2 days after Maya's fight, the main Mordock swarm began moving toward the asteroid field. Long-range sensors showed over 300 bioships heading their way, including several massive creatures the size of small moons. "This is it," Raven announced to the combined fleet. "Everyone knows their jobs. Humans will engage the enemy directly. Lyrian ships will provide support and rescue operations. Stay calm, stay focused, and remember we're fighting for the survival of an entire species." The battle plan Raven had developed was complex but elegant. The human and Lyrian ships would use the asteroid field like a fortress, hiding among the rocks and striking at the enemy from unexpected angles. The Mordock organisms were fast in open space, but they were clumsy when forced to navigate around obstacles. Pilot Maya Singh was leading a squadron of 6 fighters, 3 human, and 3 Lyrian. The alien pilots were still nervous about combat, but they trusted Maya after seeing what she could accomplish. "Remember," Maya told her squadron, "we're not trying to destroy the whole swarm. We just need to confuse them and make them angry. Get them to chase us into the asteroid field where our larger ships are waiting." Navigator Zane was aboard the Prometheus, plotting courses through the asteroid field that would bring enemy ships into perfect positions for ambush. His job was to ensure the human and Lyrian vessels could move quickly through the rocks while the enemy got lost and confused. "I've mapped 23 different escape routes," Zane reported. "If things go badly, we can disappear into the asteroids and regroup." Weapons Specialist Corporal Javier Ruiz had spent the last week modifying every weapon on the Prometheus. Working with Lyrian biotechnology, he had created ammunition that could adapt to different types of targets. "These new rounds will eat through Mordock bioarmor like acid," Javier explained. "The Lyrians showed me how to make bullets that are essentially alive and hungry." As the enemy swarm approached, Raven could see the true scale of what they were facing. The Mordock creatures moved like a living river of death, flowing through space toward the asteroid field. At the center of the formation was a massive organism that dwarfed everything around it. "That's their queen," Axel reported from his tactical station. "It's over 8 kilometers long. I'm reading thousands of life signs inside it." Dr. Yamamoto studied the sensor readings of the giant creature. "Raven, I think that's not just their queen, it's their brain. The whole swarm is controlled from inside that thing." Raven felt a chill run down her spine. If they could somehow destroy or disable the queen organism, the entire swarm might collapse. But getting close to it would be nearly impossible. "One problem at a time," Raven said. "First, we have to survive the initial attack." The Mordock swarm reached the edge of the asteroid field and began spreading out to search for their prey. Smaller organisms moved quickly between the rocks while the larger creatures stayed in open space to provide support. Maya Singh and her fighter squadron were the first to make contact. They appeared suddenly from behind a large asteroid and attacked a group of Mordock scouts. The enemy creatures were caught completely off guard. Target-rich environment, Maya said calmly as her weapons tore into the enemy formation. All squadrons, begin hit-and-run attacks. The battle for the Veiltar system had begun. Human fighters danced between the asteroids like deadly ghosts, appearing just long enough to kill their targets before vanishing again. The Lyrian support ships moved like living shadows, rescuing damaged fighters and providing supplies to the combat vessels. But Raven knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when the Mordak Queen decided to enter the asteroid field herself. When that happened, they would need a miracle to survive. As explosions lit up the space around her, Raven Blackwood smiled grimly. Humans had always been good at creating their own miracles. Today, they would find out if they were good enough to save an entire alien species. The Deathworlders were about to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The battle had been raging for 4 hours. Commander Raven Blackwood watched from the bridge of the Prometheus as human and Lyrian ships fought desperately against the Mordak swarm. They were holding their own, but just barely. Maya Singh and her fighter squadrons had destroyed over 70 enemy organisms, but more kept coming. The Mordak seemed to have endless numbers. For every creature they killed, 2 more appeared to take its place. "Commander," Dr. Yamamoto called out from his station, "I'm reading massive movement in the enemy formation. The Queen organism is moving toward the asteroid field." Raven felt her stomach drop. The Queen was enormous, over 8 kilometers of living bioship bristling with weapons and spawning chambers. If it entered the asteroid field, their carefully planned defenses would be useless. "All ships, fall back to defensive position Alpha," Raven ordered. "Prepare for heavy contact." The Mordak Queen moved slowly but inexorably toward the asteroids. As it approached, Raven could see smaller organisms launching from its sides like spores from a fungus. Hundreds of them, more than they had faced so far. "We can't fight that many," Axel said from his tactical station. "We'll be overwhelmed in minutes." Dr. Yamamoto suddenly looked up from his computer with excitement. "Raven, I think I know how to stop them. Remember how Maya said they all move like a school of fish? I've been studying their communication patterns." "What did you find?" Raven asked. "The Queen organism is sending out constant control signals to all the smaller creatures. It's like a biological radio broadcast, but using bioelectrical pulses. If we could disrupt that signal..." "The smaller organisms would lose their coordination," Raven finished. "They might even turn on each other." "Exactly, but there's a problem. To disrupt the signal, someone would have to get inside the Queen organism and plant a virus directly into its nervous system." Raven stared at the massive enemy creature on her screen. Getting inside it would be nearly impossible. Getting back out would be even harder. "I'll do it," said a voice from behind them. They turned to see Kethvar standing in the doorway to the bridge. The Lyrian had been working in the science labs below. "Absolutely not," Raven said. "It's too dangerous." "Commander Blackwood," Kethvar said quietly, "my people are dying because we cannot fight. But this is something I can do. I understand bioelectrical systems better than any human. If I die trying, at least I will die fighting for my people." Before Raven could argue, Maya Singh's voice crackled over the speakers. "Commander, I've been studying the Queen's defenses. There's a small opening near its reproductive section, probably for smaller organisms to enter and exit. If I could get a boarding party close enough..." "It's suicide, Maya," Raven said. "Maybe," Maya replied, "but it's the only chance we have. And Commander, I volunteer to pilot the boarding craft." Raven looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were scared, but they were determined. These people had traveled across the galaxy to help aliens they had never met. Now they were willing to sacrifice their lives to save them. "All right," Raven said, "we do this together. Maya, you'll pilot the boarding craft. Kaede, you'll handle the technical side of planting the virus. Kethvar, you'll guide us through the biosystems. And Dante, you're going to make sure everyone comes back alive." "What about you, Commander?" Dante asked. "I'm going to make sure we have a way out," Raven said. 30 minutes later, a small boarding craft launched from the Prometheus. It was one of the modified Lyrian ships, designed to look like space debris floating in the void. Inside were 5 beings who might be about to save or doom the entire system. Maya piloted the craft carefully toward the Queen organism. the massive creature loomed ahead of them like a living mountain. Up close, they could see that its surface was covered in thousands of sphincter-like openings, constantly opening and closing as smaller organisms moved in and out. "There," Kethvar said, pointing to a section near the creature's midsection. "That opening is larger than the others. It appears to be a primary access point." Maya adjusted their trajectory, keeping the ship's engines at minimum power to avoid detection. The boarding craft looked like floating debris, but if they moved too quickly or too obviously, the Queen's defensive systems would identify them as a threat. 60 seconds to insertion, Maya announced quietly. Dr. Yamamoto checked his equipment one final time. The virus he had created was a combination of human computer programming and Lyrian bioelectrical patterns. In theory, it would disrupt the Queen's control signals and cause chaos throughout the Mordock swarm. In practice, they had no idea if it would work. Security Chief Dante examined his weapons. He had chosen the most compact but effective armaments available: pulse pistols, plasma grenades, and a few of the bioammunition rounds that Corporal Ruiz had developed. If they encountered resistance inside the Queen organism, he would need to clear a path quickly. Kethvar's bioluminescent patterns were cycling through rapid color changes, a sign of extreme stress among his people. This was the first time any Lyrian had ever voluntarily entered a hostile environment with the intention of causing harm. 30 seconds, Maya said. Everyone ready? The opening in the Queen's hull was directly ahead of them now. It was easily large enough for their small craft, but as they approached, they could see it was defended by smaller organisms that acted like antibodies in a biological system. Those are guardian organisms, Kethvar said. They will attack anything they don't recognize. Then we don't give them time to recognize us, Maya said. She increased power to the engines and shot through the opening before the Guardians could react. The interior of the Queen organism was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a vast organic cavern filled with flowing bioluminescent fluids and pulsing arteries the size of subway tunnels. The air was thick and humid, filled with strange chemical scents. The nervous system should be toward the center, Kethvar said, consulting a bioscanner he had brought. But we need to follow the main neural pathways. They moved through the organic corridors carefully. The walls around them were alive, constantly shifting and adjusting. Occasionally, they would pass openings that led to other chambers, and they could hear the sounds of machinery and movement deep within the creature. This thing is like a biological factory, Dr. Yamamoto said in amazement. It's building new organisms while we're inside it. Focus on the mission, Dante said sharply. We need to plant the virus and get out before we're detected. They had been moving for 20 minutes when they encountered their first serious obstacle. A group of guardian organisms had found their abandoned boarding craft and was following their trail through the Queen's body. Contact rear, Dante announced, raising his weapon. The guardian organisms were smaller than the space-borne Mordock creatures, but they were fast and aggressive. They moved like organic missiles, launching themselves at the intruders with venomous intent. Dante's first shot took out the lead guardian with a burst of bioammunition. The creature dissolved into acidic sludge that ate through the organic floor, but more were coming. Move, Dante shouted. I'll hold them off. Maya and the others ran deeper into the Queen organism while Dante fought a running battle with the Guardians. His weapons were effective, but he was severely outnumbered. This way, Kethvar called, leading them down a pathway that pulsed with electrical activity. I can feel the main nervous system. It's close. They emerged into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The Queen's brain was enormous, a complex structure of neural tissue that filled a space the size of a cathedral. Electrical impulses flowed through it like lightning, and they could actually hear the creature's thoughts as low-frequency vibrations in the air. That's it, Dr. Yamamoto said. That's where we need to plant the virus. But the brain was suspended in the center of the chamber, 20 meters above them and surrounded by flowing bioelectrical energy. Getting close enough to plant the virus would be extremely dangerous. I can reach it, Kethvar said. My people are adapted to work with bioelectrical systems. The energy won't harm me the way it would harm humans. Kethvar, no, Maya said. The feedback could kill you. My people are already dying, the alien replied calmly. This is how I can save them. Before anyone could stop him, Kethvar activated his biosuit's electrical systems and began floating upward toward the brain. The energy fields around the neural structure reached out to him like welcoming arms. Dante's voice crackled over their communicators. I'm running out of ammunition. Whatever you're going to do it fast. Kethvar reached the Queen's brain and began interfacing with its neural pathways. His own bioluminescent patterns synchronized with the creature's thought processes, and for a moment, he experienced the mind of the Mordock Queen. It was ancient, hungry, and utterly alien. The Queen saw all living things as food to be consumed. It had been traveling through space for millions of years, devouring entire civilizations. The Lyrians were just the latest in a long line of species that had been harvested. But the Queen had never encountered anything like humans before. The memories it had received from the destroyed scout organisms were confusing and frightening. Humans were unlike any species it had ever consumed. They were aggressive, adaptable, and seemingly impossible to predict. Kethvar pushed Dr. Yamamoto's virus into the Queen's neural networks. The alien programming spread through the creature's consciousness like wildfire, disrupting control signals and creating chaos in its thoughts. The Queen organism began to convulse. Throughout the chamber, alarms began sounding as the creature's body responded to the neural disruption. It's working! Dr. Yamamoto shouted. The virus is spreading through the entire nervous system. But the process was killing Kethvar. The feedback from the Queen's dying mind was overwhelming his own neural pathways. His bioluminescent patterns began flickering erratically. We have to get him out of there, Maya said. She activated her suit's emergency thrusters and flew upward toward Kethvar. The bioelectrical energy around the brain was chaotic now, lashing out randomly as the Queen's mind collapsed. Maya reached Kethvar just as his consciousness began to fade. She grabbed him and pulled him away from the brain, but the damage was already done. The alien was unconscious and barely breathing. We need to leave now, Dante's voice called over the radio. The whole place is coming apart. The team ran through the collapsing corridors of the Queen organism as the virus continued its work. Behind them, they could hear the creature's death throes, a sound like a dying mountain. They reached their boarding craft just as the Queen's body began its final convulsions. Maya got them launched and clear of the creature seconds before its biological system shut down completely. On the screens of their small ship, they watched as the massive Queen organism went dark. Throughout the asteroid field, the smaller Mordock creatures suddenly stopped their coordinated attacks and began moving randomly, some even turning on each other. The virus worked, Dr. Yamamoto said in amazement. Without the Queen's control signals, the swarm is falling apart. Commander Blackwood's voice came over their communicator. Excellent work, boarding team. Return to the Prometheus immediately. We have wounded to tend to. As they flew back to the human ship, Maya looked down at Kethvar's unconscious form. The alien had sacrificed himself to save both his people and the humans. She hoped he would survive to see the victory he had made possible. Behind them, the Mordock swarm was in complete chaos. Without their Queen's guidance, the individual organisms were unable to coordinate their attacks. Many were simply floating motionless in space, their biological programming unable to function without central control. The battle for the Veiltar system was over. The Deathworlders had kept their promise. 3 days after the destruction of the Mordock Queen, the surviving members of the Lyrian collective gathered in the largest remaining ship to celebrate their salvation. Commander Raven Blackwood and her crew were guests of honor at the ceremony. Kethvar had survived, though Dr. Chen said he would need extensive medical care. The neural feedback from the Queen's mind had left him with permanent changes to his bioelectrical patterns, but he was alive and conscious. You came when we called, Kethvar said to Raven, his voice weak but filled with gratitude. The stories about the Terran Deathworlders were true. You saved us when no one else would. We saved each other, Raven replied. Your people's biotechnology made the difference. Without it, we never could have created the virus that stopped the Queen. The Lyrian leader's pattern shifted to show deep emotion. What will happen to us now? Our worlds are gone. We are refugees with nowhere to go. You could come with us, Dr. Yamamoto suggested. Earth has room for peaceful people who want to build rather than destroy, and the things we could learn from each other. Or we could help you find a new world, Raven added. Somewhere safe where you can rebuild your civilization. Kethvar considered this for a long moment. Some of my people want to find a new homeworld, but others might wish to travel with the humans, to see what other wonders exist in this galaxy. The choice is yours, Raven said, but know that you will always have friends among humanity. The Lyrian Collective helps save human lives today. We don't forget our debts. As the celebration continued around them, Raven stepped away to speak privately with her senior officers. Maya Singh was there, as were Dr. Yamamoto, Dante Reeves, and the others who had risked everything in the battle. "So what now, Commander?" Maya asked. "Do we continue our survey mission?" Raven looked out at the stars through the transparent hull of the Lyrian ship. Somewhere out there were other species that might need help. Other civilizations that might be facing extinction at the hands of creatures like the Mordak. "I think our mission just changed," Raven said. "We came out here to explore and catalog new systems, but maybe we should be doing more than that." "What do you mean?" Dr. Yamamoto asked. "The Lyrians called us Deathworlders," Raven said. "They asked for our help because they'd heard stories about humans about what we're capable of when we're protecting something important." She paused, thinking about the implications. Maybe it's time we started living up to that reputation officially. Maybe Earth needs to know that there are threats out here that peaceful species can't handle alone. Dante nodded slowly. "You're talking about some kind of rapid response force. Ships that can move quickly to help civilizations under attack." "Exactly," Raven said. "We've proven that human technology and alien biotechnology can work together. We've shown that species with different philosophies can fight side by side when it matters." Maya looked excited by the possibility. A fleet of ships crewed by humans and friendly aliens, ready to respond to distress calls from anywhere in the galaxy. "The Galactic Defense Initiative," Dr. Yamamoto suggested. "Humanity and our allies protecting peaceful species from existential threats." Raven smiled. It was a good idea, but it would require approval from Earth Command, funding, and volunteers willing to spend years in deep space. It would be dangerous work with no guarantee of success. But as she looked around at her crew and their Lyrian allies, Raven knew it was the right thing to do. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of creatures like the Mordak that saw other species as nothing more than food to be consumed. Someone needed to stand between the predators and their prey. Someone needed to answer the distress calls from civilizations that couldn't defend themselves. The Deathworlders of Earth had proven they were up to the task. As the U.S. Prometheus prepared to leave the Veiltar system, Raven recorded a message to be sent to Earth Command. In it, she detailed the battle against the Mordak swarm and the successful cooperation between human and Lyrian forces. But more importantly, she requested permission to establish a new kind of mission for humanity's deep space fleet. Not just exploration, but protection. Not just discovery, but defense. The message would take months to reach Earth, and the response would take months more. But Raven was confident that humanity would approve. After all, protecting the innocent from monsters was what humans did best. It was what made them Deathworlders. The first official ship of the Galactic Defense Initiative launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. The GDI Valiant was a marvel of human engineering enhanced with Lyrian biotechnology. Its hull could repair itself, its weapons could adapt to different types of enemies, and its crew was a mixture of human and alien specialists. Commander Raven Blackwood stood on the bridge of her new ship, watching Earth shrink behind them as they departed for the Outer Rim. Her crew was larger now, 50 humans and 20 Lyrians, all volunteers who had signed up for the most dangerous duty in the galaxy. Maya Singh was her chief pilot, leading a squadron of fighters that combined human engineering with Lyrian self-repair systems. Dr. Yamamoto had been promoted to chief science officer, specializing in the integration of different species technologies. Kethvar had recovered from his injuries and chose to remain with the human crew. His understanding of bioelectrical systems made him invaluable, and his experience with the Mordak Queen had given him insights into biological threats that no one else possessed. "Commander," Communications Officer Petra called out, I'm receiving a distress signal. It's coming from the Kepler 438 system, about 40 light-years from here. What kind of distress? Raven asked. Unknown attackers, possible extinction-level threat. The species calls themselves the Andromedans. They're requesting help from, quote, the legendary Deathworlders who saved the Lyrian Collective. Raven smiled. Word of their victory against the Mordak had spread throughout the galaxy faster than they had expected. Other species were beginning to understand that humans and their allies would answer calls for help. Set course for the Kepler 438 system, Raven ordered. Maximum speed. Aye, Commander, the navigator replied. As the Valiant entered faster-than-light travel, Raven reflected on how much had changed since that first distress call from the Lyrians. Humanity was no longer just exploring the galaxy, they were protecting it. And throughout the cosmos, peaceful species were beginning to understand that they had allies among the stars. The Deathworlders of Earth would answer their calls for help, no matter how dangerous the threat or how far they had to travel. Because that's what humans did. They protected those who couldn't protect themselves. They were Deathworlders, and they would heed the call.